we need to adapt the way we build to try and reduce the amount of climate change that takes place, but then also we've got to think about some change that is inevitable with the climate and how we adapt our buildings so that they can cope with some of those changes. I guess one of the most obvious changes we're going to have to adapt to is building in more flood resilience in buildings, particularly where we're building coastal areas and on floodplains. Clearly we're going to get more flood effects over the next few years, so we need to think about that in the design, and probably we need to design for a hotter summer season. We're going to find that buildings increasingly tend to overheat in the summer months, so we're going to have to adapt to that. But in terms of adapting our buildings so that we actually reduce the actual change in the climate, probably the single most important thing is obviously just making them more energy efficient, and that's probably down to better insulation of buildings. That's the key thing there. Buildings, the built environment in general, represents about 40% of greenhouse gas emissions, so it's a big proportion of the greenhouse gases. Obviously transport and industry and agriculture are also important, but buildings are a very important element of that. And so we can do a great deal to combat climate change by reducing the energy use in our buildings. There's two ways we can do it. In the UK we've been quite good at decarbonising the electric power grid. We've got more renewable energy, so making sure that we move to electrical energy in buildings rather than putting buildings on the gas network is a key thing, moving away from gas and other fossil fuel heating systems. That's an important step. But we also need to reduce the amount of energy that they consume, so that's generally what we would call a fabric first approach, improving the insulation levels in buildings and the way they retain their heat. That's going to be quite important as well. And then we also have to think about what's called embodied carbon. That's the energy that goes into the materials and products that make up a building.